Hi again. So, in the previous talk, we established that it makes most sense scientifically, which is a combination of inductively and deductively, which I explained what those are, that there is a maker for existence, meaning that in the highest probability, there is a maker for existence. And we went over the fact that in this physical world, there is no 0 and no 100. What do I mean by that? Very briefly, there is almost never, there is a never or an at all, and also almost never there is always and every time in almost anything. Even that rule has an exception. That means that there are a few things that do have always. For example, in this physical world, every living thing dies without exception. Everything that lives, from the smallest of microbes, bacteria, all the way on up to plants, animals, people, everything in land, air, and sea that lives at some point dies. There is absolutely no exception to that. So, but almost, let's say 99.9% of, or somewhere thereabouts, of all facts have exceptions. So they are almost all the time true, or nearly all the time true. So, for example, I'm trying to think of examples and I want to be accurate and precise. And I will explain what accuracy and precision are. So, we can say that almost every car accident involves someone being negligent, meaning one of the two drivers. Or if it's a single car accident, the only driver being negligent. But sometimes not. Most of the time, nearly all the time, the driver or drivers in a car accident are, to some extent or to a large extent, careless, negligent. But sometimes it's the city's fault. So the drivers, sometimes an accident happens because the city has not put a stop sign where it should put it, or it has not trimmed the trees and the trees have overgrown and they are covering up the stop sign or the red light. That's just an example. Or there are many other rules that, for example, another example, almost every liar can be caught in his or her lie if you question them enough. Almost every liar. Because when someone lies, and judges in courts and investigators and detectives know this very well, that when you question a liar long enough and come at him from different angles, they give their lie away because they cannot keep track of every single detail of their lie. However, if you're telling the truth, it doesn't matter how they question you, you always tell the same story or the same truth. I don't like the word story because it implies that it's fiction. When we are talking about truth, we are talking about facts. So I misused the word story. So when someone is telling the truth, they always speak the same facts. They always make the same statements. They may state it differently, but they get the same concept across. But conversely, when someone is lying, as I said, if you question them long enough, almost every time, you can catch them in their falsehood, in their lie. But this rule has an exception. Some people are so good at lying for various reasons. The reasons are not important, but maybe they have done it all their life. They say that psychopaths and also sociopaths, they are pretty good liars because they believe their own lies. They have no conscience. They have no superego, as Freud called it, or as psychology calls it, which is the same as morality, basically. So, sorry about that jitter in the video. So that rule has an exception. So I've given two examples, the car accident example, the lie example. I'm trying to look for a good example because car accident and lying, they're both negatives. I don't like to only give negative examples. So, okay. Generally speaking, when people receive a gift, they get happy, right? But that's almost always true. 99% of people, or nearly all people, when they get a gift, they're like, oh, I'm so happy, a gift, how great. But some people, they may have, for whatever reason, they may have a problem with gifts. Maybe just thinking of scenarios, possible scenarios. Maybe someone, when they saw somebody receive a gift and they got so happy that they had a heart attack and passed away. That happens. I'm sure it has happened in the history of humanity. And then the person who saw the person receive a gift, let's say if it was there, may this never happen to anyone. These are just hypotheticals. We are dealing with reality, the nature of reality the reality of existence. So that person may not like gifts. So if you give that particular person a gift, they might have post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, because they saw that particular occasion that somebody that they liked, or even somebody that they were in presence of, received a gift, and that person, the recipient of the gift, got so excited that their heart couldn't handle it. And they had a heart attack. And for example, they ended up in the ER. Even if they didn't pass away, they ended up in the ER. And that made a negative impression on the observer, made enough of a negative impact on that observer's personality or psyche that from that point on they developed a negative thought and feeling about receiving gifts. So they become an exception to that general rule. So all three examples that I've given have demonstrated that in this physical world, almost every rule has an exception. Even that rule, if you say every rule has an exception, then that's incorrect, because that rule itself has an exception. And I gave the example of everything living dies. That rule does not have an exception. Or to the extent that we know gravity, which is the weakest of the four fundamental forces in existence, it is the weakest force. However, interestingly and quite amazingly, it holds together existence's largest physical bodies together, such as huge stars and planets and celestial bodies. Galaxies are held together. These huge things in the existence are held together by gravity, which is the weakest force, and the four fundamental forces in existence, as theoretical physicists define them, they are called the strong force in order of strength. The strongest force is the strong force, then electromagnetism, the electromagnetic force, then the weak force, and gravity. The strong force, which is the strongest force in existence, it holds the smallest things together, which are subatomic particles. So I'll just leave it there. That's just saying that what I was stating that was that another rule that does not have an exception is that to the extent that humans know so far, gravity always attracts. Gravity is an attractive force. That does not have an exception so far. They may discover it, but so far we haven't discovered, we meaning humans, theoretical physicists and astrophysicists who study celestial bodies and the laws that govern celestial bodies, and also subatomic particles, which are quantum mechanic physicists. They have not discovered gravity that is repellent. It's always attractive. So almost every rule has an exception in this physical world. So we said that in all probabilities there is a maker for existence. And we explained that. So, what is the next question that needs to be answered? After we have answered that, there is a maker. Well, here is the next question. What is our role, our meaning human beings, in existence? What are we here to do? So, and of course, there are other questions to be answered. So we will get to them. In your comments, you can ask the question that you think should come second. I'm not saying I have all the answers. So I will definitely entertain them, of course. So, and I will do my best to answer if your question makes sense. So, for example, if you say the second most important question that humans have to answer is, what was the best movie ever made? Come on. That is not the second most important question. But nor may mine not be the second most important question, which is what is human beings' role in this existence? For example, someone might say the second most important question that's to be answered is, what is that maker like? Actually, I personally like that question better now that I say it. So let's make that the second most important question. Okay? Just to show you that one has to be flexible. At no point one should be dogmatic and so entrenched in one's own beliefs to not ever show flexibility to change or question them. So let's answer that question second. What is that maker like? Or what are the attributes of that maker? Now, when I think about it, I think that is, now I told you in the first talk that I'm doing this unprepared. I don't prepare for these talks at all. This is completely impromptu, unprepared. I did not sit here deciding to record this video. I was sitting here watching videos on YouTube, to be honest. And I just said, oh, I might as well, and I might as well talk some more about explaining existence. And so, and I like that because of two reasons. It's very honest. It promotes honesty to speak in an unprepared fashion. Secondly, I like to challenge myself, to put myself on the spot, which I am. I am literally on the spot, literally and figuratively. So, what are the attributes of the maker? Well, I don't know if I said this in the first talk or not. I believe I did, but it bears repeating. And if I didn't, then it's the first time that I'm saying it. So, the general rules of existence can almost always be figured out by anyone who has two qualities. One is that they have somewhere around average IQ. If they are way below average, then of course they cannot figure things out. So that's the first condition or the first requirement. The second requirement is that they use that IQ that cognitive power that they have. First, they need to have somewhere around average. They say an IQ of 100 is average. Let's say even if they're 80, 85, I'm not, this is, being a psychologist is not my profession, so I don't know exactly, but almost everything has margins. We don't live in an unforgiving world or in an unforgiving existence. So, for example, you can have all kinds of diets and almost none of it will kill you instantly or will make you healthy instantly, right? So I can go eat pizzas for like 5 days in a row, 3 meals a day. I'll gain weight, but I can still walk, talk, carry on, and I can reverse it and start eating salads and healthy stuff. And then the pizza effect will hopefully at some point go away. So we live in a world that has margins. So that applies to intelligence as well. So the world, existence, I like the word existence better because the whole talk is titled Explaining Existence, is made in such a way. I'm specifically avoiding the word created because that implies, we will get to that later. I'm just going to say manufactured, made, constructed. So some people have biases towards certain words, and I don't want to bias anyone. Like I said, in future talks, we will get there. So the existence is manufactured or made, constructed in such a way that anyone who has true requirements can figure the macro picture, the rules that apply to the macro picture, to the eagle eye view, to the big picture. They can almost everyone who has somewhere around an average intelligence, IQ, cognitive power, and both conditions are necessary here. It's not an or. The person needs to have both of these conditions. And they apply it. They use it. Because there are tons of smart people or average intelligence people that don't apply it. That's their choice. I'm not saying I agree with their choice, but I respect their choice. I respect their freedom to make that choice, but I strongly disagree with it. Okay? But if they tell me, hey, you know what? I'm intellectually lazy. I'm like, okay. Some people are physically lazy. As a matter of fact, currently I myself don't exercise. So I'm physically lazy. I don't like it. I disagree with that choice that I myself have made. But I respect that choice if anyone makes it, including myself. But since it's me, well, I'll just stop there for that. I'm going to start exercising, by the way. All my life I've been an active person, but right now I'm going through certain life circumstances that, and it's nothing, no ailment or anything like that. It's just that I'm working a lot and my work is sedentary and there are, there's certain other contributing circumstances, but I am going to. I'm just being lazy. The bottom line is I'm being lazy. So, because I'm a realist, so I'm not going to, beat around the bush and, kind of muddy the issue. The fact is I'm being lazy. So, By the way, my shirt says Chicago. I just saw that. So I didn't want to just show some of the letters. And so in any case, so the big pictures now. And a person does not need to be educated. So anyone who has those two qualities, they have somewhere around an average intelligence and they apply it regardless of their education. They can figure out the big picture of existence. And one of the issues of the big picture of existence is, what is the maker like? You don't need education. You don't need to be super smart. Anybody can figure this out, and a lot of other things that we will talk about. So I want to mention this and then end the talk because I'm trying to make it somewhere around a half hour. So all you need to do is look at existence. And when you look at something, the way to look at something, the way to think about almost anything, again, is that almost, because almost all rules in this physical world have an exception. So you can't say the way to look at everything. Not when you're talking about the physical world. No. So the way to look at almost everything, if you want to figure out its big picture, is to start with the big picture. So the big picture of existence is the sky, the galaxies, the stars. That's where you start. You don't start, in your apartment or in your house. You don't start with the small things, with the details. You start with the big picture, and then you gradually narrow it down to the most relevant details. And you don't need to get too detailed either. So don't make life unnecessarily difficult on yourself. So what is that big picture? Well, when you look at the sky, and when I look at the sky, when anyone on this earth looks at the sky, actually, let's make that broader. When any human who has ever lived has ever looked at the sky, and that includes humans that have ever lived, that are currently living, and will ever live until however the world continues. Whether it ends or it doesn't end, we don't want to go there right now, but all humans that have ever existed and are existing now and will ever exist, when they look at the sky, when they have looked and look and will look at the sky, what do they see? They see a lot and lots of celestial bodies, a lot of dots in the sky, which astronomers are telling us there are billions and billions and billions of galaxies, and each galaxy has billions and billions and billions of stars and planets and stars and other bodies. Black holes, red giants, white dwarfs, nebulae, all sorts of celestial bodies. And so that's the first thing you see, that there is tons of them. Some people almost say it's infinite, which numbers of physical things cannot be infinite. So, for example, you cannot have infinite numbers of galaxies because they are physical things. They end at some point. If you count them, Maybe you'll get to 100,000 billion, which is really 100 trillion. But then, and you say, oh, there's 100 trillion and 1. And then you run out of galaxies. You cannot, infinity is a concept. So you cannot have infinite number of apples, for example. If you count all the apples on Earth, there's a certain number. We don't know what that number is. I don't think anyone knows the number of apples on Earth. By the same token, even more importantly, there's definitely more stars than apples. Okay? Or anything that you want to mention on Earth, almost anything. Because if someone says, what are the number of atoms or the number of electrons on Earth? That might be more than the number of stars or celestial bodies of all kinds. You know, I would think that they are in this, there could be comparable numbers. Okay? They are in the same ballpark, in other words. They seem like they would be in the same ballpark. But they are finite, if someone could count them, which we humans at this point cannot. Okay? That's a limitation of our capabilities and the limitation of science currently. So, when you look at all of these celestial bodies, as everyone has, I'm sure, I don't think there's a human that has ever existed, exists, or will ever exist that we can say that that human has never looked at the sky. I'm assuming that they have the sense of sight. So, they have seen the sky, and they see, what do they see? What do you see when you look at the sky, other than the vast number, the huge number of celestial bodies? What do you see? Night after night. Now, they are there during the day too, but you just don't see them because of the sun, right? Okay. You see the moon during the day a lot of times, if clouds are not covering it, but you don't see stars, okay? Or celestial bodies, because I'm not sure everything that you see is a star, and it's not.